With the help of Hashem, we are starting Seder Moyed Masechtas Shabbos. Just pointing out that in all of these 6 Sedarim other than Moyed, the name of the Seder is B'Lashon Rabim, Zroyim, right? You have Moyed, you have Nashim, you have Nezikim, you have Kotchim and Taharois. The only Seder that is named in the singular is Moyed. And that's perhaps because when it comes to the special appointed times in the year, we should live in every time, in every yontiv, that this is the yontiv. And that's b'chlal our approach. Whenever that Rebbe used to speak about every single yontiv, that Rebbe would fabring and explain how this yontiv is the greatest yontiv than all the other yomim tovim. To make each moyed a moyed for itself. The first mesechta in moyed, the greatest time is Shabbos. Mesechta Shabbos. We're going to have on Daf Ayin Gimel in the 7th chapter in Klal Gadol, the Mishnah that enumerates the Arbaim Chasar Achas, the 39 prohibited types of work that we must refrain from during Shabbos. Interestingly, the last one mentioned in the Mishnah that enumerates all 39 is the malacha of transferring of Hoitza'ah. Nevertheless, the Masechta will begin and spend a lot of time speaking about the final of the 39, which is, as the Mishnah will call it here, Yitzios HaShabbos. Now, just to mention that the Alter Rebbe, at the end of Kuntres Achron, right after he passed away, his children added in the Sefer Tanya Kadisha the final 2 sections, Igeras HaKodesh and Kuntres Achron. In the Kuntres Achron, the Alter Rebbe Mamash at the end concludes by saying that Kol Hashem Shabbos Kil Chasoi Moich L'noi Al Kol Avei Noisov and Kil Chasoi Daiko. And the Alter Rebbe advocates the importance, Lachin Mutel Al Kol Echad V'Echad, right? Liyois Baki Behilchasa Rabasa L'Shabbata. So we are now engaging in going through all of the melachas. Obviously, when we learn Gemara, we are not paskening any din from the Gemara. We have to continuously learn Hilchai Shabbos. That is what the Alter Rebbe is speaking about in Kuntres Achron. But there's no doubt that understanding the source of all of these halachas, but through going through Masechta Shabbos, it gives all of us a much greater understanding of and knowledge in, ultimately in all of the Hilchai Shabbos. And this is also connected to our final mission in Galus, which is Lahavi Liyamais HaMashiach. One of the names we give to the days of Mashiach is Yoim Shekule Shabbos Anunuch Alachai Elamim. So there's a special koyach and a special kavanah that learning Shabbos should be the final learning of Torah that we need to accomplish until finally Mashiach, which way overdue, will come into the world, and we're going to usher in the Yoim Shekulai Shabbos. Now, when it comes to the malacha of transferring, right? It's called Hoitza'ah, or here in the Mishnah the word will be Yitzi'os in the plural. Just to be kitzer, say the following. Mida Oyraisa, there are 2 Reshuyos, there are 2 domains, a Reshus HaYachid and a Reshus HaRabim. All of these concepts we're going to unpackage better in greater detail as we learn along. The definition of a Reshus HaYachid is not a property that's owned by an individual. B'chlal not. Reshus HaYachid means there is a property that has the size of 4 by 4 tfachim or more, and it's either surrounded with a wall that is 10 tfachim high or more than 10 tfachim, or it itself is on a mound that is 10 tfachim high, or it is in a crevice in the ground that is 10 tfachim deep or more. You understand? So, and it can be a lot more than 4 by 4. It's at least 4 by 4 tfachim, surrounded or separated from the surrounding areas with a mechitza of at least 10 tfachim. In greater detail, as we will learn, also already connected to Eruvin, properties adjacent one to the other. One belongs to me, one belongs to me and you. It's not owned exactly under the same ownership, even if it shares some of the same ownership. We're going to get into all of these details later, right? But let's speak about it. It's a property, 4 by 4, 10 tfachim. The airspace going up, al pi halacha, is until the heavens. In other words, the reshus, the domain of a reshus hayachid, in the airspace is everything above such a reshus hayachid. A reshus harabim will mean a domain, a property, which is not walled, nor is it going to be roofed, like a city street, like a city square, and it has at least 16 amas of width, and according to some, it has to be servicing at least 600,000 people. If we follow that it has to be servicing at least 600,000 people, that would substantially limit the actual amounts of Reshus Harabims that we have even nowadays in the world, that they have almost 8 billion people in the world. Okay. The airspace above a Reshus Harabim is only up 10 Tvachim. It's very important. And higher than 10 Tvachim over a Reshus Harabim is no longer a Reshus Harabim. The Chachamim added another, now anything that's not a Reshus Harabim, biblically will be called a Reshus HaYachid, which is why it's important to understand Reshus HaYachid doesn't mean it's privately owned. It can be a public street. If it doesn't have 16 amas of width, it's biblically called a Reshus HaYachid. The Chachamim went ahead and they said that no, not, you can't call anything that's not a Reshus Harabim a Reshus HaYachid, because there are many domains that are very similar to a Reshus Harabim. And therefore they called many of such domains a Karmelis. A Karmelis needs to have at least 4 by 4 Tfachim. Why will it not be a Reshus HaYachid? Just giving you an example, because it's not walled off with a wall of 10 Tvachim. It's less than 10 Tvachim. And then there is a domain that is called a Makayim Ptur, which will be a domain that doesn't even have 4 Tvachim by 4 Tvachim. It's at least 3 Tvachim off the ground. I know this is a lot of information, but we're going to unpackage it in a much better and slower way as we go through the Masechta. Now, the act of transference is defined by the Torah by a 2-step process, dafka, and if we didn't do both steps, then we did not violate biblically the violation, the prohibition of hoitza'ah, of transferring. These 2 steps are called akira, which means you uprooted an item from where it was, so there was something stationary in, let's speak biblically, in one of the 2 domains. Let's say you're going from the Reshus HaYachid to a Reshus Harabim, for example. That will be actually the explicit source in the Torah, L'Rashi, that one may not transfer on Shabbos, even though they are all generally learned from the fact that God Almighty juxtaposed the Isur of don't do work on Shabbos with the mitzvah of Meleches HaMishkan, of building of the Mishkan, from where Chazal learned that any of the 39 different types of activities that was done, that was used in the building of the Mishkan, called, not building, Meleches HaMishkan, these are the 39 melachas that we may not do on Shabbos, but the Torah enumerates 2 of these melachas explicitly. One is carrying, and the other one is creating fire. When it comes to carrying, so we have in Vayakel that Moshe Rabbeinu told the Yidden that don't bring any more donations. He meant on Shabbos. You're never going to find a person building telling people to start bringing them. On Shabbos, don't carry. And their act of transferring is that we lived in our private domains. Being that Moshe Rabbeinu lived inside of Machna Leviah, and that was a place available for all of the Jewish people, so it serviced Machna Leviah. Everyone came to it, serviced 600,000 people. So Machna Leviah, Moshe Rabbeinu was sitting in a Reshus Harabim. People were taking their donations from their homes, from their tents to Moshe Rabbeinu. So the actual prototype of transferring in the Torah is called hoitza'ah, taking out from in to out. Or the premise, the paradigm is in. Hoitza'ah is taking it out. So they did a uprooting of, a lifting up their item from their tent, and then they would place it down in the Reshus Harabim, called a hanocha, akira and hanocha. Only if one did both the akira in one of these 2 domains, and then there was a hanocha in the other of these 2 domains biblically, Reshus HaYachid, Reshus Harabim, either direction, only then did one violate the biblical prohibition of hoitza'ah. If a person only did one of the 2, either only the akira or only the hanacha, then this person did not break Shabbos biblically. And if a person, God forbid, is machal Shabbos, if there was a proper forewarning and there were 2 witnesses, and there is a Sanhedrin, then this person would be judged to be put to death by skila, by stoning. If a person broke the Shabbos intentionally, but some of the preconditions for a Beis Din to be allowed to execute capital punishment was not there, for example, there weren't 2 witnesses that saw you, then the person would be, God forbid, receiving the punishment of kares. And if a person breaks the Shabbos inadvertently with more details to define exactly what's b'shoigeg, then the person is chayiv achatos. So when are you chayiv chatos? Let's always speak about a yid breaking Shabbos b'shoigeg. If the person did both the akira and the hanacha, Rishus harabim, Rishus hayachid, Rishus hayachid, Rishus harabim, chaytza achnasa. If a person did only one of the two, then they did not break Shabbos biblically, but they broke Shabbos rabbinically. And interestingly, this is a term that's used only by Shabbos. Chayiv means you broke it biblically. The word patur doesn't mean that you're good. You're not chayiv. It means you didn't break it biblically. The word patur, as it is used in the tractate of Shabbos, always aside of three cases, labar mahani telas, the Gemara tells us, aside of three exceptions, the word patur doesn't mean you're good. You're patur. No, it means you're patur from a punishment, but you're chayiv medivrei sofer. Patur, it's called patur avol asur. Whenever someone did something in which they did not even break a rabbinic law, then we use the term mutar. So there's chayiv, patur, and mutar. Now there's going to be a whole array of unique dinim that are connected to Shabbos. We have a concept of meleches machsheves. We have a concept of misasik. We have a concept of psikresha. We have a concept of mekalko. We have a concept of malacha she'ein tzricha legufa. We have a concept that rabbinic laws on Shabbos are not even called midrabanans, they're called the shvus. And many other very unique terms that we have for Shabbos, but let's begin focusing on the prohibition of transferring. And begins the holy Mishnah, Yitzias HaShabbos, that the prohibition of transferring on the Shabbos is shtayim shehein arba bifnim. There are two types that are really four. In regard to the person that's standing inside, because we will differentiate, we will enumerate both the act of going from the private to the public, and the way the Mishnah will word it is speaking about the person who's inside in the Rishus hayachid. We're going to call that person the balabayis. The person who is outside, we'll call that person the ani. And what's going on over here is that there is an interchange between the balabayis, ideally of helping the ani, but each one in their domain. So the balabayis giving something to the ani is an act of yitziyah, of taking out, which is actually the explicit source in the Torah, like we mentioned, from giving donations to Moshe, from the Rishus hayachid to the Rishus harabim. Now there are two types of violations. Why will there be two violations? There are two types which become four for the one who's inside. The two biblical that become four rabbinic. What are the two biblical? Is either the balabas, he is doing the akira and the hanacha, right? From inside to outside. Or the balabayis is doing the akira and the hanacha if he's taking something from the ani and bringing it into him. So transferring is both from Rishus hayachid to Rishus harabim. It's also from Rishus harabim to Rishus hayachid. If you did both akira and hanacha, shtayim, these are the two biblical violations, and they become four. What's the four? That if only akira was done without hanacha, you are also violating rabbinically the act of transferring. It's called patur avol asur. Truth be told, that it's not two that's four. Really, you can say it's two that become six, because when there is a akira done by one and a hanacha done by the other, each one is violating a biblical violation. Our Mishnah is not focusing at all on the one who's only doing the hanacha, even though one who only does a hanacha violated rabbinically yitziyah. Our Mishnah is only speaking about a person who potentially could have also violated that malacha mida'iraisa. Now, if you have two people involved in a transference, one does the akira and the other one does the hanacha, from these two, who's the only one that potentially can hit a da'iraisa? Only the one that did an akira. Because if I got to be did an akira, then if I also do the hanacha, then I violated the da'iraisa yitziyah. If I did the akira and you did the hanacha, since the akira was already done, you don't even have the potential of hitting a da'iraisa isur. So our Mishnah is only focusing, as we'll see, both of us will be both us and midrabanan. But our Mishnah is focusing on either the one inside did both akira and hanacha, and then there's another two cases where the one inside only did the akira. So it's 2 midaraisa, 2 midarabba. And the same thing, v'shtayim shein arba b'chutz. And you have another 2 biblical violations, which can also become another 2 and 2. 4 rabbinic violations to the ani who's standing outside. Here, the ani outside, he can do the akira and hanacha going out to in. He can do the akira and the hanacha if the ani puts his hand in and takes it out. He does the akira and the hanacha. In that case, these are the 2 cases. And then they can become another 2 if you only focus on the ani's act of akira without the hanacha. And as the Mishnah will go through all these cases. Ketzad. Now, the Mishnah in Pirkei Yomi says that one of the signs of a chacham is al rishon rishon val achron achron. But you have it throughout Shas, sometimes like this, sometimes like that when the Mishnah opens up giving 2 rules, and then the Mishnah wants to unpackage it, sometimes we follow the Seder of Rishon Rishon Achron Achron. The Mishnah began speaking about the Bifnim. Had the Mishnah followed the Seder of Rishon Rishon Achron Achron, the Mishnah now would have explained the Balabayas. But sometimes you begin to explain the last thing that you mentioned. That's the Seder here. So the last thing that we mentioned was the Shtayim Shein Arba for the Ani, for the one Bachutz. So Ketzar on the Bachutz. The Ani is standing outside. The Balabais is standing inside. So the 2 acts of transferring that is in violation of the biblical Yitziyah will be Pashar Ha'ani Yas Yadai Lifnim. If the Ani extends his hand inside, in other words, he made the Akira something, this is the pre-Moshiach, the Ani is giving to the Usher. So that's the first thing that Mishnah is speaking about. Maybe that's why we start in this order. Huh? Just to know that you don't know who's the giver and who's the taker. Here, the Ani is giving to the Balabais. So he began by uprooting it outside, and then he makes a hanacha v'nasan l'tech yadai shel Balabais. In this example, one of the challenging details of the beginning of Shabbos is to determine how do you define the hand of a person. As we'll see right now. Here, if the Ani did the Akira and the Ani put it in the hand of the Balabayas who was already standing inside, that's a bona fide hanacha. Not that he put it on the floor, he put it in his hand and now he did the whole malacha, Akira and hanacha. That's first biblical violation. Or, Shenatal mitoicha, the Balabas was standing inside, the Balabas had food in his hand, the Ani put his hand inside, he didn't do anything yet, but he takes the food off the hand of the Balabayas. So he did the Akira in the Rishus Hayachid, V'hoitzi ha'ani, and the Ani takes it outside. Now in this case where the Ani takes it outside, Rashi importantly says, that will be the first Rashi we're learning in the Masechta, that V'hoitzi ha'chefetz v'hiniach b'Rishus Harabim. Here for the Hanacha to be called the Hanacha, it's not enough that it is in the hand of here the Ani's hand is moving, unlike the first case. Here he has to actually put it down. And now, chayiv, these are the 2 chayiv, not pater. Here, that's a biblical violation. Skila, kares, b'shoigeg, chatos. And the other 2, balabayis is pater. Here's an exception. In this case, the balabayis did nothing. Not the akira, nor the hanacha. So that's why Rashi says that here, the word pater means pater lagamri, v'afilo lechatchila muter. This is an anomaly of the use of the word pater, as we mentioned. Now, the next Pasha Balabayis is Lachutz. If the Balabayis extended his hand outside, so the Balabayis did the Akira because he's giving something, and here again he doesn't have to put it on the ground. The Ani is stationary. He puts it in the hand of the Ani. It's as if he put it on the ground of the Rishus Harabim. So the Balabayis did Akira and Anacha, or the Ani is standing with something in the Ani's hand, and the Balabayis takes it from his hand. Vehichnis Balabayis, and L'chura, according to Rashi, now that his hand, which began in another domain, for him to complete the act, he has to put it down on the ground. Here is the 2 that the Bifnim guy, the Balabayis, violated biblical Hoitzah, and therefore he's chayiv. And the Ani, in these 2 cases, here is the exception, pater means mutter.
But here he should not be.
What?
Here the Ani should be chayiv because he's in the Rishus Harabim.
No. The Ani did nothing. In this case, the Ani had something in his hand, but the Ani wasn't moving.
But now he's in Rishus Harabim. What can he do?
Yeah, he's just standing there.
He's just standing there. No, the Ani is completely mutter. The Ani did nothing. The Ani did not even do the Akira. The Balabais took it from his hand.
The only case he would be really putter is if he doesn't move now the rest of Shabbos.
No. He can move around. No, the ani had something in his hand. Someone else took it out of him. How does that restrain him? It's not in the ani's hands now.
The first one, if he took it and now he's in Rishus Rabbi.
Okay, let me say Rabbi Chen is just...
Get to Rishus Rabbi.
We don't know that, but I want to mention something else. That even though the Mishnah is speaking about hoitzah in the context of transferring something from one domain to the other, there is another type of hoitzah that's not mentioned in the Mishnah. And that is, that we'll learn this if it's a tradition, that we are not allowed to move around an item in the Reshus Harabim for Daled Amos. That means if you are holding something bid Reshus Harabim, you may not do a akira and a hanacha from one Daled Amos to another Daled Amos. That's not mentioned at all in the Mishnah, but that's another din, Midai Rais and Shabbos. Now, the Mishnah is going to go through the two Midrabanans, Shtayim, Shein Arba. Now, like I mentioned, the emes is that there are four Midrabanans. The Mishnah is only focusing on the ones who only did the akira. And in all of the cases that we gave, we can go through other cases where one party only did the akira and the other one did the hanach. So let's go. Pashat ha'ani yasad lifnim. Right, this is the two rabbinic extensions. In other words, the ani began by Shabbos with something with the ani. The ani is in the Reshus Harabim. When he puts his hand inside, what did he already do? An akira. He did an akira. But instead of him putting it in the hand of the balabayis, no, v'nata balabayis mitoicha, and the balabayis did the hanacha. So here we're just looking at akira. Here that's one case where an ani did an akira, going from which direction to which direction. It's called hachnasa, from outside to inside, or shenasan letoicha, that the ani who put his hand inside the domain. He's asking for food. The balabayis put something in the hand of the ani. So who did the akira? The balabayis. You see the hand because even though it's still in the private domain, but it's in the hand of the ani. So the akira already happened. And then v'hoitzi. And then the ani took it out. And we are focusing on whose akira now? On the balabayis. We're just focusing on. So now we have another two cases of akira. In these two cases, both the ani in the first case and the balabais in the second case are peturin, meaning that they're not going to be chayiv skila, kares, or chatas, but they violated the rabbinic law of doing half of doing just an akira. And now we're going to go through the other case. Pashat balabais is yadul achutz. The ani is outside. The balabais is extending his hand to give him something, and the balabais puts his hand outside. So you had an akira from the Reshus HaYachid. But the balabas did not give it to the ani. He didn't put it in the hand of the ani. The ani took it from his hand. So the balabais did not do the hanacha. V'not al ha'ani mitoicha. So here we're focusing on the akira of the balabais. Just truth be told, again, the ani also violated the rabbinic Shabbos. But we're focusing on the akira. Or shenasan letoicha. The ani. Here again, the irony, we're beginning and ending with the ani giving to the balabayis. So the ani puts, the balabayis stuck his hand outside. The ani put something on the hand of the balabayis. So the ani putting it in his hand means the ani did the akira. And then the hichnes, then the balabais takes his hand inside. So in these two cases, shnehem is referring to both cases on the one who did the akira, pturim, they are exempt, midoiraisa, but patur avol asur. Let's learn the first Tosfos. Yitzias HaShabbos 2 Shein Arba. Hiksha Riva. I don't understand. The dinei hoitzoi Shabbos hoyloi l'shanois gabei avis malachis achar perek Klal Gadol lekamon. We have on the 7th chapter. We have the Mishnah in Klal Gadol. The Mishnah enumerates the Arboim Chasarachas. And if you look at that Mishnah, the Hasam Ktani avis malachis mem Chasarachas viktani hoitzo libasoif. How ironic is that? The Mishnah is counting the 39 malachas, Sedur the Pas, with the whole Seder and then of making garments. The last one in the Mishnah is Hamoitzi Mirashus L'Rashus. And there, the Gemara begins to explain each one. So Haitzah should have been the one explained, the last. And here it's explained the first, and there's so much on Haitzah. How does that make sense? Tosfos gives 3 answers. I was getting late. We'll go. The first answer is, you have to scoot down that in this malacha and this Mishnah has many details in it, way more than other of the Lamed Ches, the other 38. There's Haitzah and there's Achnasa. There's the Ani and the Asher. There's the concept of Akira and Anacha. There's the concept that if two people do something together, they are exempt midoraisa. The whole concept of the hand of the person is certainly considered a domain like 4x4. As we mentioned, Bekitzin in the Hagdama, that any domain that has less than 4x4 is called a Makom Ptur. If we would have viewed the hand of a person as a Makom Ptur, then all of the cases which amounted to someone placing something in the hand of the other, it should not be considered anything. We don't consider that. So that's rule number one. Second answer of Tosfos v'Rabbeinu Tam Farish, the Dover HaHoive. The rule of Rabbeinu HaKadosh is that which is the most common is learned first. So yeah, many people nowadays live in a city that there is an Eruv, and Hashem should bless all of these Eruvim that they should be kosher, and if it's down, people should know that it's down. But if you don't live in such an environment, you should know, Ayid, the malacha that is, you can argue that most people break without knowing is carrying. We know not to do malachas, but how many times could it happen that if you didn't check your pockets, and how true is this, especially when we grow up in cities with an Eruv, in which you or your family uses the Eruv, how careful we have to be when we go to another place, people transfer. So it's very common, so we have to speak about carrying. And number three, which is a two-step answer, Tosfos, the last words in this Tosfos, Mishum de Malacha Geruah. Carrying is considered a weak malacha. Like Tosfos will explain, that's going a little 3 lines under the Rashi. A malacha is called a weak, Haitzah is called a weak malacha, because what difference does it make whether you're transferring it from the Reshus HaYachad to the Reshus HaRabim, or from a Reshus HaYachad to a Reshus HaYachid? You're not working harder. Just because it went from one halachic domain to the other, that doesn't affect your effort. So why is it asur? It's weak. Other Rishonim word this in different ways, and just that one nice Hasidic intro. Why do we rest on Shabbos? We rest on Shabbos from work because God Almighty rested on Shabbos. That's what it says on the Chumash. God was not tired, so He did not need a break. Rest does not mean vacation for God, nor does that mean it for us. We can actually, through keeping Shabbos, have to exert ourselves much more than people who don't yet keep Shabbos. We're biblically not allowed to start a car. Walking to shul for an hour is much harder than, God forbid, driving to shul. So why is this called work and that's not called work? Because we are doing what God does. God's refraining of work means that God stops creating. Truth be told, that if God would stop creating, the world would go back to nothingness as it was before the creation. So as Hasidus explains, what really the correct wording is that during the week God is creating through speech. On Shabbos, God rests from verbal creation, and God's creation is through God's thoughts. And being that thoughts is a much deeper place within God, Kaviyachal, that's why there is greater Kedusha in the world, because the source that's creating it is a higher level of godliness. But let's speak about on the external level of speech. God stops creating through speech. So there is a ceasement, there is a stopping of creation. Now we don't create something from nothing, but our creation means we change items. We go miyesh liyesh. And if you'll notice that all of the malachas, aside of carrying, follow this criterion, that what is prohibited for me to do on Shabbos, I may not make a change. Planting, plowing, cooking, writing, building, it's all changing. You know which one malacha doesn't look like you're making a change? Carrying. I'm taking this from inside to outside. This didn't change. So Haitzah doesn't fit the concept of not working. That's why it's called the Malacha Geruah. Now the question is, why Takit is it Asr? And that's the last intro, which is a very important rule. And that is because we are changed according to the environment that we are in. So if I am in one domain and I go into another domain, not only a person but even an item, that item undergoes a change. Because you are in a different environment. It's not as tangible as, it's a Malachi Geruah, but there is a change. And that's why this var, Tahayim Yoim, that a chassid is one who makes the environment. We have to be very careful. Because we are not people that close ourselves up in our holy environment. No, our mission is to go out there. But we have to be cognitive that if we won't be the ones making the environment, then we will be affected by the environment. And if the environment out there is not yet as it should be, then that's not a change that anyone wants to undergo. Okay. Gemara. Now, a good chazara of Shavuos. Tanan Hassan. We learned over there in the beginning of Shavuos. The Mishnah there is enumerating various laws in Torah Shebaal Peh that are formulated, they're taught, they're received, they're passed on in the formulation of Shtayim Shehein Arba. Shavuos, Shtayim Shehein Arba. So bekitzer, that there's at the end of Vayikra, when the Torah is speaking about the Isur of Shavuos Bitoy, the oath of utterance, the Torah speaks about someone who makes an oath, Lahara or Lahetiv. As we learned in Shavuos, bad and good in the context of Shavuos is not ethically bad or good, but about doing or not doing. That if a person swears, I swear that I will eat, or I swear that I won't eat. Will eat is good, meaning positive. That I won't is a negative, and if they break their oath, then you have the carbon oil of a whatever the punishment is. The Torah speaks about two yes and no in the future. Chazal learn out that this type of oath also applies to the past. A person can swear, I swear that I already had eaten, I ate bread, I swear that I didn't eat bread. That's Shtayim Shehinar. Now, all of these four are biblical oaths for which there are, under certain circumstances, punishments, mid'oraisa. But God explicitly spoke about future, yes and no, and we add the other two in the past, yes and no. Turning to the Beis Amud Beis. Then the Mishnah goes on to another halacha that is passed on to us in the formulation of two types that in reality are four types. And those are Yidiyas Hatuma, Shtayim Shein Arba. Also connected to that same parsha at the end of Vayikra, where the Torah is speaking about someone who knew that they became Tamei, then while they forgot during a lapse of unawareness of Helem, they either entered a holy place of the temple, as they are Tamei, and we're not allowed to enter the holy temple compound when we are Tamei, or they ate holy food, sacrificial food, Tumas Mikdash Ukadashav, while they were unaware. And then they become aware again, that's the Yidiyos plural, Oy Gewalt, I was Tamei. The Torah, then there's a punishment. Carbon oil of. Now the Torah is speaking about a person, again, there's two sins here, either entering Mikdash or eating Kodesh. Tumas Mikdash Ukadashav. But the Torah is speaking about a scenario where you forgot that you were Tamei. It's called Helem Tuma. But then really there's another two cases. You knew you're Tamei the whole time, but for a while you forgot that this food is holy, and you ate it. And then you remembered, oh, it's holy. Or you forgot that this area is Harabayas.
What's the four?
The Torah speaks about a person who knew something, they forgot during the lapse of unawareness they violated, and then they realized that they violated. So the Torah's cases is where a person became Tamei, they forgot that they were Tamei, and they violated two violations, either entering the Mikdash or eating kosher. That's the two. The other two that we learned that God also is alluding to, even though it's not as explicit, is a person became Tamei, they never forgot that they're Tamei. The sin of Shoigig was, the Helem was, they forgot that the food is Tamei. 3. Number 4, they forgot that the area is holy. And then they realized, oh, I ate kachim, or I entered the Mikdash. That's the Shtayim Shein Arba. Maris Negoyim, the shades that are Tzoras shades, are two mentioned explicitly, which is Se'es and Beheres. Beheres is the bright white snow type of discoloration of skin. Se'es is the white discoloration of wool. White wool is not as white bright as snow. These are the two that are Shtayim, and really there's a sapachas, there's a subdivision of each of these two. One more connected to snow, which is the lime of the temple, and one connected to the white wool, and that is the thin membrane of an egg. So the Torah speaks about two, and really Shtayim Shein Arba. And then the Mishnah quotes here, Yitzias HaShabbos Shtayim Shein Arba. End of quote. Now, the Mishnah is compiling many laws of the Torah that are Shtayim Shein Arba. Now here's the challenge. The Mishnah over there, speaking about transferring, says Shtayim Shein Arba, period. What does that Mishnah say over here? Shtayim Shein Arba b'fnim, v'shtayim Shein Arba chutz. It's a lot more elaborate. So that's the kasha. Fact the Gemara, 3 lines from the top. Maishna hache de tani bei shein dalad bifnim u bei shein arba bachutz u maishna hasam over there in Shavuos that all the Mishnah mentions, all the Tana mentions the tani stein shein arba and v'suloi. That's the kasha. Now people intuitively, this is Shabbos, and this is the main topic. But let's clarify what is that which is looked at here and not over there. So we will begin. Answers the Gemara. Hach over here, the Iker Shabbos. It is the main Shabbos. Masechta Shabbos. So Tani Avos, which is the primary cases, V'Tani Toldos, the secondary cases. Very importantly, my friends, Toldos does not mean rabbinic. Avos and Toldos many times throughout Shas is defined by that which God speaks about explicitly, the examples that God gives, and all of its similar cases that are equally on the same level as it is in Shabbos. If someone violates something which is not explicitly in the 39 melachos, but it's similar to the 39, that's a biblical violation. Oh, so it's not the Iraisa de Rabbanan. So here we're speaking about Avos and we're speaking about Toldos. Over there, Iker Shabbos hu, the Lavika Shabbos hu, Avos Tani, and Toldos Loi Tani. So what are we referring to? So this is what Rashi says. Again, Rashi, unlike Tosfos, we're learning Gemara. Rashi quotes the verse that we quoted in the intro from Vayakel, where Moshe Rabbeinu told us, Vayaviru kol b'machna, don't bring more donations. If they would have brought donations on Shabbos, what type of transference would have happened? From the private domain, I would have donated something that's in my tent, and that item I would have brought to Moshe, Machna Levia, which is in Rishus HaRabim. So the malacha of Yitzia, it's taka Yitzia, not Hachnasa, taking out. And there are two. What are the two of taking out?
The guy inside and the guy outside.
So the two that are taking out is that I can take out if I'm standing inside, and the one standing outside can put his hands in and take it out as well. That's the shtayim. And what will be the arba? If the Mishnah there is only speaking about Yitzia, what will be the arba? The other two rabbinic taking out. We're only focusing on the taking out. So there's two taking outs, which is a full akeda hanacha, done either by the guy inside, by the pnim, or the guy outside. And then there's another two. No, we're mentioning the Rabbanan there, but we're only looking the one direction of Yitzios. Being that we learn out a logic, Mali from inside to outside, Mali from inside to outside, Mali from outside to inside, so biblically Hachnasa is also us. But that's not mentioned explicitly. So Toldos, Shabbos Avos Tani, but the Toldos Loitani, the Toldos again Rashi would mean the act of Achnasa, Doiraisa bar Achnasa, says the Gemara, Avos Maninu Yitzios. Not be, can be, because if you're focusing on Yitzia versus Hachnasa, right, there's only two Yitzios. There are only two Yitzios if we're separating it. There aren't four Yitzios. Why are there not four Yitzios? Because we're speaking about a biblical violation. Biblically, there can only be two Yitzios. By the one who's inside and the one who's outside who puts his hand inside and takes it out. And the chitema, so say what we explained. How did we explain it? Yeah. There's two Yitzios midoraisa, and then there's two Yitzios midrabanan, right? Just the akira. The chitema mehemlechim leptur. That's how we explain. That can be. That cannot be the meaning in the Mishnah in Shavuos. You know why, my friends? Because the Mishnah is putting it together of many other halachas. Let's go to the halacha prior to that. Maras Negoyim. When the Mishnah there says, Shtayin Shehein Arba, I want you to know that all of these four colors create soras midoiraisa. The Shtayin Shehein Arba in the other cases all midoiraisa. Vadumi de Maras Negoyim Ktani. And Ma Hasam Kula Lechiyuva. Meaning, if a person has tzoras, for example, they are tamei, they may not enter the temple. If they enter the temple, if they were tamei midoiraisa, then they get a biblical punishment. Who gets the biblical punishment? Not only the person who has the baheres, not only a person who has the se'es, even the person that has the sapachas to each one. So they're all biblical. Af hachinami kol lechiyuva. Hachinami means in here in Shavuos. Elam Rav Papa, like this. Hacha over here, since it's the main topic here, Masechta Shabbos, Deker Shabbos. So therefore, our Mishnah is speaking both about the Doiraisas and the Rabbanans. Now it's going to fit. Over there in Shavuos, since it's not Iker Shabbos, so chiyuvei tanei, pturei loy tanei. Now, whoa, 1 second. So if we're saying that over there, the Mishnah in Shavuos is only speaking about midoraisas, so what will be the 2, what will be the 4? The two will be the example that the Torah gives. Moshe Rabbeinu says, don't bring donations on Shabbos, from inside to outside. Who are the 2? Midoraisa, the balabas, and the ani. What will be the other 2? Midoraisa, not half malacha. The other 2 will be not Yitzios, but Hachnas is the opposite. Someone who's taking from the outside and bringing it inside. You know what the problem is? That the Mishnah there in Shavuos, as the Mishnah here says the words Yitzios HaShabbos, how can Yitzios is not 4? Male until now we were saying that Yitzios, if the meaning of the Mishnah in Shavuos would have been the 2 which are rabbinic, half of a Yitziyah, it's all about Yitziyah. It's either doing the whole Yitziyah or doing only the Akira of the Yitziyah. But if you're telling me that to be consistent in Shavuos, all of the 4 are Midoraisa, so 2 that are 4 are Yitziyas and Achnasas, so now Chiyuva Maininu Yitziyos, but Yitziyos is only 2. Answers the Gemara, no. That's what it means. 2 are Hoitzah. The other 2 that become the 4 are Hachnasa. Hachnasa, Akira, and Hanacha. The Mishnah uses the words Yitzios. So Amar Ravashi, doesn't matter that the Tanoim are allowed to call Hachnasa with the word Hoitzah. And I'll prove it to you from our Mishnah. Don't go to Shavuos. Look at our Mishnah. How does the Mishnah begin? Yitzios HaShabbos. Yitzios HaShabbos. L'kul alma, the way we're learning the Mishnah, part of what the Mishnah is counting, both the Odoraisas and the Rabbanans, is Achnasa. And these are the words in Daf Ayin Gimel, HaMoitzi, Mi loy askinan. He's going to Ayin Gimel, that the Kama Ayel min Reshus HaRabban Reshus HaYachid, Mamish, Reshus HaRabban to Reshus HaYachid is the opposite direction as the case in the Torah. Again, in the Torah, the carrying was from my tent, my donation to Moshe Rabbeinu. Here, is it not true that if you go from the Reshus HaYachid, the Kokar Lehaitza, and Takav, because Kol Akiras Chayfetz Mima Kaimai, what is the paradigm? An item before Shabbos, as Shabbos enters by the Bein Hashmashos, if it finds itself in whichever domain it is, that is the domain of that item. And when you are moving it, you are taking that item out of its domain. So if the point of reference is we are the observers, we're looking at it, then we can differentiate between Reshus HaRabban to Reshus HaYachid, Hachnasa, or Reshus HaYachid to Reshus HaRabban, Hoitzah. But as far as the Chayfetz itself is concerned, when you change something from its present state, what act did you do? You did an act of Hoitzah Karila, and Amar Avina. So he brought a proof from Ayin Gimel. And Amar Avina Masnisa Nami Daiko. Because our Mishnah says, Yitzios, and become a farish achnasa la'alter. Immediately the Mishnah begins giving cases of achnasa. Shmamina, indeed. Rava gives another approach. Well, this is the right interpretation of Shavuos. And we gave the right interpretation of the Mishnah here. The question is, how can we use the word Yitzia for Hachnasa? So Rava says, don't focus on the word Yitziais. Reshuyais ketani. In other words, domains. We're enumerating how many domains we have. Reshuya Shabbos, when it comes to domains, there are two domains in which there can be 4, because you can be going from one domain to the other. Don't even focus on the word Hoitzah and Achnasa. Look at the broader picture, like Rashi, 10, 11 lines from the bottom. Rabba Amar, the Kashi Lach Lishna, the Yitzia, Bein Hachin Shabbos, Bein Hasam and Shavuos, Reshuya is Ketani, domains. Reshuyos, Shtayim. What are the 2 Reshuyos? Reshus HaYachid and Reshus HaRabban. And that evolves into 4, God willing, to be continued. I want to finish off with one Tosfos. Tosfos points out on Amud Aleph, the second Tosfos, that indeed, why is the Mishnah using the words Yitzios? Why not use the word Hoitzah, which is a more correct word for the act of transference? So Tosfos brings another pasuk in the Chumash that prohibits carrying. Rashi doesn't bring it, Tosfos brings it here. That's even before Vayakal and Bishalach. And that is when Moshe Rabbeinu told us, Al Yetzei Ishmim and Kaimai. Don't bring, he was telling us not to bring manna, not to bring the man. which is one of the reasons why Taket fell on Shabbos, a Mishnah Lechem, and that word in the Torah there is Aliyah Ishma Mekoymai. So we use the Lashon Akra, which is Yitzio is God willing to be continued.